I'm going to call to order the January 10th Committee of the Whole meeting. The first item on the agenda is item 1B, adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Okay, considering the feedback we've received, I'd like to make a motion to remove item 4A, reimagine school.
Okay, I'd like to second. Okay, so we have a motion from Ms. Herderick and a second from Ms. Waters to remove item 4A, the reimagined school proposal. Do we have any discussion or questions? I can offer this, just because we feel that given the feedback, there's a lot of questions still surrounding this and a lot of information that's really not driven by the folks who created the proposal. And we really need to work hard to make sure that our word is out and not, sort of hearsay. Okay.
Is this only for the committee of the whole or the board meeting as well? We're only approving the committee agenda, correct?
Right, so then we would do the board during the board agenda. Okay, any other comments or questions on that particular motion? Or did you have anything else? Okay.
Just stay tuned for further announcements.
Okay, so do you want to make your motion, can we do it just to adopt the agenda with removing item 4A? Correct. All right, so the motion is to adopt the agenda, removing item 4A. If nobody else has any questions, please vote. Ms. Coakley, are you on the call?
I'm here. I am on the call.
Can you-
It's not articulating on the screen to allow me, but I vote aye. It's not popping up on my screen.
Got it, understand that. Okay, that motion passes. The next item on the agenda is 2A, public comments. Ms. Waters?
Thank you, Ms. Darby. We do have 30 people signed up for in-person comments, which is going to take up the entire balance of the public comments time. So just please be aware that because we are at full capacity, we are reducing each speaking time to 1 minute. And that is just per policy based on the number of people who signed up. So we're going to start with Mr. Gary McAuliffe.
Good afternoon. My name is Gary McAuliffe. I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent, and a member of a resident of Charleston County. Recently, we have seen disputes between the public and various school boards concerning subjects such as COVID-19 policies, critical race theory, and gender issues. I decided to learn more and have attended CCSD board meetings for the last 6 months. I recently provided observations and recommendations to the Chairman Eric Mack and the trustees, and I just wanted to recap those recommendations. First, I'm recommending that the more access to board meetings be provided to the public. Secondly, I'm recommending an improvement in public comment time so that comments are received from the public before any actions are taken. I'm interested in what consultants are being hired by the CCSD, and I think that would be of interest to other public members.
Thank you, sir.
I do have 2 more things real quickly. Inform the public in an active way about the curricula and to standardize the meeting times. I think that's really important for the public to be able to attend.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Francis Balak.
I'd like to take this opportunity to ask Lauren Herdrich to recuse herself from any decisions associated with Coastal Community Foundation due to her conflicting financial interest that's expressed through evidence in her 990 tax forms with Kids on Point.
Mr. Baylock, this time cannot be taken to discuss matters specific to members of the school district.
Okay, well, if you're going to move forward with proposals, you need to be clear about what your competing conflicts are and make sure those are transparent and documented and that you follow the board procedure. Because otherwise, this erodes the public trust and the decision-making capacity of this institution when these financial conflicts of interest are so egregious and undisclosed and undiscussed. So, thank you.
Next, we will have Ms. Carol Temple. We'll move on to. Okay. Yep, okay, thank you. Next, we'll move on to Mr. Kenneth Melton.
I realize you just delayed this vote, but my name is Kenneth Melton. I'm a farmer on Johns Island and the father of 4 children, 3 of which attend Angel Oak Elementary School. I'm here today to urge you to dismiss the Reimagine Schools proposal. I have onions to plant and chickens to feed, but I'm here right now because it's too important to remain silent. The board should let school principals and SICs continue to do their job without any third-party interference. I encourage you to listen to the parents united in their opposition outside this building and listen to those teachers and staff who oppose this plan or coerced into silence out of fear of losing their jobs. I choose to send my children to Johns Island schools, entrusting qualified educators each day with their instruction. Mr. Goss and Mr. Kennedy, as they have said, are not educators and therefore should not propose or implement any plan. CCF did not consult us as a community in this proposal, which circumvents principals, teachers, SICs, and parents in the decision-making process.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Copley, and thank you, Ms. French, for engaging us as a community.
Miss Lisa Ruda is next.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Ruda, and I'm the Executive Director of Charleston Rise. I come before you today on behalf of our 228 graduates, asking you to support the Reimagine Schools proposal. There's a whole bunch of reasons why we're asking for your support. Most importantly for us is that we believe that it gives students attending some of CCSD's most failing schools the chance to see improvement while they're still in school. It's been 2 years since you adopted the Mission Critical Initiative and created the zone of 15 acceleration schools. We remain a steadfast supporter of that initiative, but candidly, while much has been infused with professional development and curriculum, the life of a child at one of those failing schools has not improved in a measurable way. So when we see a proposal like Reimagine Schools, we get excited when it targets some of our most failing schools, providing them, their parents, and community an opportunity to see real improvement while the children are still in schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Ms. Beverly Birch.
You should have received it rather than be representing racial justice network. So I'm just going to tackle a few other things. We strongly agree that something must be done to improve the quality of education for our children. We also recognize the urgency. However, you can't hand parents a proposal dressed up on a silver platter and say, eat. The board and previous boards have approved tons of money in haste to groups with cookie cutter plans, but where are the results? We know, and you know, our present system is not designed to educate all children alike. We have academic magnet, who's the second in the nation, first in the state. We have the School of the Arts. We have Music Academy, and so on. So we could do it for them, we could do it for all. We just need to slow down the process and see what works. You already know what works. It is clear as day is from night that a line has been drawn between white children and Black children and the haves and the have-nots. So we implore
Thank you.
you to read the letter that we submitted and take your time to come up with the best plan possible. Thank you.
Mr. Reidenbach, are we ready with the folks who are outside? Okay, so I'll go back just from the top. Or would you just like to send them in the, are they already lined up? Okay, well, okay, that's fine. Yep.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Chris Mock. I am the SIC chair at James Sims Montessori, a 3K through 8th grade school. We submitted a letter of opposition to CCSD last night. Since then, 220 signatures have been signed to a petition that was circulated and supported by Principal Ryan, many other SIC members, and educators at our school. We really do wish that we could work with CCSD on this, but we have some concerns. There's much vagueness in the proposal, and there are some very specific concerns that we would like to have addressed. We do recognize the need to and welcome funding to help close the achievement gap caused by socioeconomic and racial issues. We want to make sure we stay Montessori. We have a middle school, and we want to make sure we
Thank
have
you,
services
sir.
that our teachers will need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
My name is Cindy Bullock, and I am currently in elementary school. To the first of all, thank you for being here today. Today, I brought some colleagues, our parents, our faculty, our community. And I feel today, she kept saying failing school, failing school. Well, my question for Mr. Ross is, has he ever been to the funeral of one of his students? Has he ever raised money for a kid to get a new heart? Has he ever gotten a bed and clothing for a family whose house was burned down? Because those are things that I can say that I have done and that other teachers from my school have done. I have held a child who cried while his mother was fighting cancer. Those are the measures of a school. That is how you measure whether a school is failing or not. We are a family, and every couple of years, I have to come up here and ask you not to pull our family apart. So I'm here today to ask you to leave us alone, empower us with the tools
Thank
you are given us, and allow us access to them.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Ryan. I'm a teacher at Burke High and a member of the School Improvement Council and the PTSA. And my single thought today is the mantra about reform, do it with us, not to us. And what I mean by that is if we're going to approach a $31 or $32 million reform project, it should really be organic. It should really be based upon consultation with the organs attached to each school and those communities. When we don't do that, we end up with chaos and low morale. On this of all years, we notice low morale. We have the problem of teacher turnover, substitutes to be found. And when we hastily rush to reform, we drag programs into schools that are unvetted, we end up with things that don't work. And so I'm really asking us to be cautious about how we think about reimagining schools. I think we should reimagine the schools we all grew up with, that were community-based, that involve parents and families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lisa Thompson Ross. I'm here as a CCSD current.
and I'm philosophically opposed to privatizing public schools, but that's not why I'm here. My concerns are with the proposal and the process. The proposal is vague and flawed. Vague with regards to, for example, prior successes. Why isn't this initial proposal for 1 or 2 schools to do a pilot test? It's flawed. For example, at the development phase, there was no public input, no parent input, no principal input, and most of all, no teacher input. Do you understand what involving the stakeholders is about? I also consider it flawed because there's a teacher shortage made worse by the pandemic. And even if you can find teachers for these spots, is it ethical to release 2/3 of teachers at these schools? It's shady. The process is shady, conflicts of interest, it's rushed. Reimagine public schools. This reimagining is not for excellence, and I thought that was our standard. I urge you to vote no.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members. Have you ever heard this phrase, nothing should be done about us without us? Even though the reimagined proposal mentions the word community 28 times, this poorly written and poorly documented proposal is not a valid community schools model. It contains absolutely no community input in its development. If $32 million is burning a hole in your pocket, give the money directly to the 23 schools. Each school's improvement council, which you know is composed of teachers, parents, administration, and the community, are capable of doing a needs assessment and putting together a proposal for the resources they need to address student achievement. With resources and support from the school district and nonprofits, the schools can accomplish their achievement goals. Our students and schools are not up for sale. Please reject this proposal and don't bring another one like it back.
Thank you.
Reverend Mack and all the aficionados on board. I was ordered, since I am the district administrator, may be extended 2 minutes to speak for 23 principals.
Mr. Darby, I really wish I could, but I can't.
Okay, in that case, I will be succinct, and my time has started, and I have spoken yet. Can we start over again, please? I need every second.
Go ahead. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Firstly, there have been no principals' input. We are adamantly opposed to this measure. Reimagine School has esoterically, assiduously, and surreptitiously sought to have this proposal expeditiously passed by the board without community support. Not only African-American community, but also the Hispanic community. They have no knowledge of this proposal, should it not be included as well. Secondly, there's no line of authority, no organizational chart. According to the proposal, the principal will not have the last word, the commission would. And as far as I understand, the state report card does not require the signature of commission. It requires the signature of principals, as we should have the last word. Thirdly, there is no record of research in terms of student achievement for reimagined schools. Hopefully, this is the top down, but let me get to my final point. I stand for 23 principals who are affected by reimagined schools. We are adamantly, ardently, and passionately against reimagined proposal and wish for the measure be eviscerated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Darby. Sir, please tell me your name when you come to the podium.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. George Temple, professor of physiology and neuroscience. I'm a scientist and educator, and I've received and earned grants from the National Institute of Health and the National Science Foundation. I know what a good proposal must contain. My efforts have brought millions to the science community. This application is sadly lacking. To be successful, my applications showed pilot data suggesting we were capable and that positive outcome was possible. This application is modeled after efforts in Indiana and Louisiana where no success has been demonstrated. My application showed information excuse me, on participants and described their willingness to participate in the specifics of their involvement. Reimagine Schools does none of it. It merely introduces a new layer of administration that does not initially involve participants defining their needs. Finally, my application showed a track record of publication to show the skills
Thank you,
of the
sir.
people involved. This is a sad
Thank you, sir.
representation. Vote no.
Good afternoon. My name is Joy Brown. I serve as Education Director for the Charleston Area League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters has a long history of supporting quality public education for all students. We believe that transparency and public input go a long way to creating quality education. We believe the Reimagine Schools funding proposal submitted by Coastal Community Foundation raises concerns with the lack of transparency and oversight as outlined in the plan. There is a lack of specifics when it comes to forming the commissions and assignment of an innovation management organization. This proposal was brought to the board for approval before input was sought from the administrators and educators of the affected areas. Research has shown that a top-down approach to education does not bring true reform. True community input and engagement is essential to the success of our public schools. We at the Charleston Area League of Women Voters ask the Charleston County School District consider our concerns regarding the Coastal Community Foundation's Reimagine proposal. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Paul Bowers. I'm a parent of 3 Charleston County School District students. I covered this district as a reporter from 2011 to 19, and I'm a member of the Charleston Democratic Socialists of America. Charleston DSA opposes the Reimagine Schools proposal and the underlying state schools of innovation law, which was written by privatizers and radical right-wing interests, specifically to undermine public control of public education. We ask you, who schools for these? If adopted, Reimagine Schools would impose the authority of an as yet unidentified innovation management organization on the targeted schools. The Schools of Innovation Law would allow 25% of teachers in 4 areas at the targeted schools to be uncertified by the state. And if, as we believe, the Main Street Schools model is adopted, teachers will lose what few protections they have under state law, including the right to appeal their findings. The wealthy control everything around us. They haunt us and pound us for our debts. They control our working conditions. So if they don't get control, they get conditions of our children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Natalie Best. I'm coming here as a teacher from Zucker Middle School. I'm an ESOL teacher there, so I would like you to know that I emailed my colleagues to let them know that I would be coming here today if they wanted to email me anything that I could say without telling them how I felt about the Reimagining Schools initiative. I only received negative feedback from the teachers. I received feedback saying that they feel insulted by this initiative. And I'm here to tell you that at this point, you cannot afford to make teachers feel insulted with the teacher shortage that we have now. They feel insulted because teachers already know why so many kids are failing. There are ample studies to show how to improve students' academic performance. We don't need another study. We need you to listen to what teachers are already asking for. please. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Marcia Lafayette Lane. I'm the School Improvement Council Chairperson for Minnehaha Elementary. We are asking that this reimagined proposal be rejected and that the Board of Trustees work directly with our schools to provide the resources needed for our schools. There are just too many unknowns and uncertainties with this plan and no stability for teachers. At least that's according to the Zoom meeting that I gathered from Mr. Goss's presentation this past week. Our primary issue is that this wasn't communicated at all to our District 23 chairperson. Neither of our principals, teachers, or any of the SIC members throughout our district. As a concerned citizen, though, I'm asking that you do the job that you were elected to do. Your constituents did not elect a third party to manage our schools. So what I'm asking you to do is do the job that you were elected to do. If you have to outsource this, then I personally ask you to resign.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nikki Cook. We have a family friend whose son committed suicide over the Christmas break. We had to bring our oldest son home from college this past spring due to severe depression. My 9th grade son in CCSD, who was healthy, was quarantined 3 times at the beginning of the school year because of football and close contacts. The mental health strain of our children is unprecedented. Quarantining healthy kids through contact tracing isn't saving any lives. This policy is only hurting the mental health of our children. My son at Wando is a positive and outgoing kid. During his most recent quarantine, I found him laying on the floor in the fetal position in the dark. He was sad, lonely, and isolated. Not once did a school nurse follow up to see if he had become sick or had symptoms. How else would they know if this contact tracing is even working? If you are taking these drastic steps to isolate healthy kids, you should at least want to know if it works. I urge you to actually think about the effects of this policy and to stop contact tracing.
Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Pastor Dixon, and I'm here with voice of teachers, parents, community activists, and advocates. A community that's asking today that this be the last thing we have to hear about the reimagining. It needs to be tracked. This is the end point as far as we're concerned as a community. You've heard from the community. You've heard the voice of the community say they don't want this. And now it's time for you to act. If by any chance today is not the final day that this either passes or is tabled, then we as the community understand that there was another agenda in place, one that does not count the voice of the people in. An agenda that was set weeks ago or months ago, that certain people on this board decided we're going to go along with that instead of listening to the voice of the people. Fastest 2 minutes I've ever seen.
Thank you.
My name is Kendra Scott. I'm here on I'm here to ask for especially reject CCSD emergency committee. And the system is not changing at all. We don't think we're trying to do black first right now. We don't think it's necessary. We think we do have a lot of work to do, but we can get it done as a community together and not have it outsourced. I think we don't know what we want or how we want to grow. And that's
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reinbach. We did have comments submitted online in addition to what was shared in person. They were primarily dealing with the Reimagine Schools proposal and a few other topics. The board did receive copies via email and will be able to review. Thank you so much, Ms. Darby.
Thank you. Thanks for,
One more person? Oh, okay.
My name is Samantha Blake, and I'm the instructional coach at E.B. Ellington. I've been out there for 11 years now. There's a proposal before this board that could potentially impact 23 schools in this district, thousands of students and families, and hundreds of employees. This was shared on the evening news. It is either incompetent planning or a direct attempt to circumvent the existing system that a proposal with this impact, not to mention staggering price tag, is shared via media rather than through a well thought out proposal process that includes stakeholder voices prior to being presented to the board for approval. When these actions happen over and over in a way that lacks transparency, that breeds mistrust in the community. We know that there are many schools in our district that are struggling and we need to seek innovative solutions. However, this board has singled out CCF, who has no proven track record in the field of education. These actions continue to show a lack of vision for our children and community, and we deserve better than this. My full statement has been submitted to the board electronically. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shannon Steinberg. I'm a parent of two students at Edith Health Ryerson Elementary School and a member of our PTA board. I'm here as well to urge you to please vote no on the Reimagine proposal. I'm 100% in favor of providing funds that will provide innovative programming for our students and improve student outcome. However, this proposal has no real depth and no real answers to several incredibly important questions. And I can't believe that you're planning on voting on something that doesn't have answers to things like what happens to our teachers' positions and what happens to their pensions, how we can have, what's going to happen to our curriculum. Several of the schools in affected districts have innovative programs in place already, including our school in Ryerson, which is a Montessori program. We have no assurances that we'll be able to continue that Montessori program there, whether all the other schools that also have innovative programs will be able to continue with that. We also have no details on what protections there will be against further disruptions for our children who are already facing COVID learning gaps, especially our minority children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thumbs up. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Waters. Thanks, everybody, for being patient and with each other on comments today. Next item is the superintendent's report, and our acting superintendent is out, which we're not going to ask for me. So we're going to ask Mr. Growy to give us a report. Is that correct?
Thanks, Mrs. Derby. It is with heavy heart that I represent Mr. Kennedy today, who's off with his family in this time of need. I'm going to open with turning it over to Ms. Taylor, Dr. Taylor, for our leadership transition update.
I'll take the next slide as well. And so since Mr. Henry is our interim superintendent, I'd like to, Ms. Williams has over 20 years of successfully leading training across the nation. Charleston County School District, third district for which Ms. Williams has provided leadership support, including the $1.3 billion budget that she
Thanks, Dr. Chair, and welcome to Ms. Williams to the team. Now on to COVID, topic of the hour. So our first slide here shows where the state of South Carolina stands. And as you can see, Charleston is nearly sitting at 1,300 cases per 100,000. We're at a high as it is across the entire state. For perspective, Charleston County was over 1,200 cases in September when we began school. So the number of cases is reflective of that across the county. The next slide is where we stand in Charleston County School District. A very staggering bar to the far right, very different than Charleston County was back in September. We're now, even though we're showing here under 800 cases, we're now over 800 cases. This slide was updated earlier today. A higher number of faculty and staff cases than we've seen in the past. Obviously, there's a breakthrough case situation that the country and state are experiencing. We're seeing the same thing. And we have a significant number of cases that are still in the queue. We are prioritizing faculty so that we can make sure that we've got substitutes in place. We've got 16 contact tracers on the line. I've got Ellen Nitz joining us by Zoom as well as we move through these slides if there are any detailed questions, but her staff is really working very hard to keep these cases being looked at, even though there is a backlog in place. They're doing a great job with that as we stand right now. Moving on to the next slide, just to reiterate your policy ADD and where we stand at your meeting in mid-December. You voted to reinstate the mask mandate between now and the 14th with possible reconsideration today. As you would have seen in the last couple of slides, we're still in a very significant COVID situation, which would warrant maintaining policy ADD in place. I did want to put a note out there that there are still mask exemptions being requested, and we are reminding families to ensure that they turn in all of the information for analysis. That isn't the district's responsibility to get the information from their medical doctors. They need to turn that information in to request a mask exemption. So the next slide, I will tell you the last 5 days has been more complicated with guidance than we've had this entire COVID pandemic. On the 4th of January, new guidance was put out by DHEC for K-12 schools. I've included some of the highlights on this slide that we've implemented. First, related to positive cases. Once they've been out 5 days, since symptoms began, they can return to school on day 6 with a note that symptoms have improved and that they've got no fever for the past 24 hours with medication that treats fever. Asymptomatic can return on day 6. For close contact, they can return to school on day 11 without testing. They can return to school on day 6 with a negative viral test taken no later than day 4. For both of the positives and close contacts, masks are required, and that is emphasized in the DHEC regulation for days 6 through 10. We are enforcing that with those that have mask exemptions. If they cannot or won't wear a mask, they can simply be quarantined like it was before until day 11 through day 10. Non-symptomatic vaccinated do not need a quarantine if their sequence is up to date. And I'll talk about that in an upcoming slide here. So that was the guidance on the 4th of December. Over the weekend, we received the DX school and child exclusion information, which is the precursor. Can you go back one slide, I think? This is the slide. So we received information on the school and childcare exclusion list from DHEC. Today, we have the guidance that was published that codified this information, provided some additional information. These are the highlights here. There's a program called Test This Day. This was included in CDC guidance back several weeks ago with no detail. DHEC has adopted it, and Ellen Nitz and her team have been working with DHEC to be prepared to implement this tomorrow. It is for close contacts to stay in school. What it would require is once they're identified as a close contact, they get a rapid test, can be in school. They have to be tested again between day 5 and day 7 to remain in school with masks worn through day 10. So this test to stay, it's incumbent upon us to ensure that we've got testing capability in the district. And I'm going to talk about that in a future slide as well. The document from DHEC does give the district the discretion to lengthen the quarantine to 10 days if necessary, and a definition of the maximally vaccinated close contacts to avoid quarantine. So these are a couple of definitions here. Maximum vaccinated for those that are 18 years and older, which is essentially the staff. They have to have both of the shots or the Johnson & Johnson with the booster or have been COVID positive within 90 days. So that booster is a requirement now for those that were tested and were vaccinated back in the spring with us. Fully vaccinated is for kids. The booster is not in plan that one. They have to have their 2 shots for ages 5 to 17 to be considered to be placed in school without a quarantine at all as a close contact. In addition to this, I mentioned this school and childcare exclusions that came out on the 8th. Actually, the school update K-12 came out today. One additional data point that I don't have on here that was in the guidance today. We've utilized the 3 positive cases in the classroom over a 14-day period. That has changed to 3 positive cases. That has changed to 20% in a class in a given day. So we've gone from 3 positive cases in 14 days down to 20% of a class in 1 day. So that clearly would indicate that we're not going to be closing schools classes unless it's necessary if there's only 3 positives across 2 weeks. Right now, we've got less than 10 classes out of school for the previous situation, and we'll be reviewing that and making sure we get those kids back into school when it's viable through the DHEC regulations. So next slide, I see Stephen's got up on there the COVID-19 update, some additional data points. I mentioned increase in testing. So we have the testing that we started in October after school hours. 3 sites on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 sites on Tuesday, Thursday, and a site on Saturday. We will continue that after school. We've added daytime sites. We began 3 sites last week, Stall, West Ashley CAS, and East Cooper CAS. We've added 2 sites this week. They opened today, Baptist Hill and St. John's. We are trying to get 4 other sites up and running to include downtown and James Island so that we basically have a full day coverage. If we have a situation at one of our small rural schools where it's very hard for families to get their kids to a test site, like a Minnie Hughes, like a Jane Edwards, like a St. James Santee, nursing services will arrange to get testing to that class, to those individuals, so that we can get those kids safely back in class in a timely manner and not have to put it upon the parents to get their kids to one of these central sites. Just a note, the mask mandate is back in place for athletics. Spectators, coaches, and players, that goes back to the fall when you implemented the mask mandate, which we used for, as an example, girls volleyball. We're using that now for boys and girls basketball and wrestling. One of the comments that comes up a lot is, when do you close a school or grade? I wanted to reiterate the DHEC guidance, which has not changed. The first wicket is the staffing levels. Mr. Kennedy implemented a daily phone call with his cabinet to make sure that we're staffing the schools as needed. Dr. Williams and Ms. Simmons work with the schools to provide an update to us that we take a look at each and every day. Mr. Brigman is working hard to bring central staff out to schools bring in as many substitutes as possible. That is probably the number one chance of closing classes and schools down in the future is staffing, because the statistics below that are very hard to reach. 30% or higher rate of absenteeism due to COVID, or 5 to 10% of the student body at any one time. And so we're not near those numbers. Now it's really the staffing situation that we're really staying focused on across the board. And before we actually close a school down, we would contact DHEC and work with them like we did in the fall when that occurred. All right, I'm going to close with the ESSER slide, and then we can come back to questions on COVID if necessary. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hayner. Switch seats. Pretty good. You moved up to the microphone. Mr. Hayner, please run through the ESSER slide for us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Roy. Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As I've said several times before, we're looking to target the board update. This opportunity to let you know some of the items in the process and give some insight of the things that we're accomplishing for our presentation. So, as you know, that we've reviewed several community proposals that did an outreach of possible programs that the community organizations or that some community organizations provide that we sponsor. We've had an extensive review of both an internal advisory team, and really not making any decisions. Nothing's been put into the category of procurement, but what we've done is got some insight of the programs that have some potential in the line. So that process has been very detailed and worked very hard to make sure we consider these proposals and give them some sense of, as I said, they align up with the strategy. So we had two significant planning retreats both before the holiday break and right after the holiday break. We've been working and developing our program in the different sections of the school district. We want to use this as an opportunity to really get together and determine what our North Star is, aligning up with some key goals that we want to make sure. Time off before the holiday break and after the holiday break, set aside our senior leaders in this. That's going to be followed up this week with some principal and principal leaders working on some key activities based on the pillars of accomplishments that we've done. So again, off sites with the senior staff, principals engagement, really working to put some detail and some meat on the bone with these specific activities that we want to execute. And of course, we're making sure that's aligned with the stakeholder input that we get over the past summer, and making sure those key 6 priorities that we developed from the output are aligned with the strategy as well. So at the next board meeting, more details of the process that we've used to develop our plan, more details on specific planned activities and programs that we're recommending, a list of community organizations that have reached out to us and given you some sense of the ones that are talking to us about what programs that they have, and also some recommendations for some community engagement after we develop our plan and how we can talk to the community about what we want to accomplish. Subject to your questions, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Hamer. That concludes the superintendent's report. Ms. Durbin.
Great, thank you, everyone who contributed to that. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Brody or anybody else who? Dr. Frazier and then Dr. French?
Yes. I had a question also.
Okay, thank you.
How are we accommodating those students who are out of school, Mr. Baroy? Educationally, are we providing lessons for those students? Could you update the board on that information?
Yes, Dr. Frazier, I'd turn it over to Learning Services. They've worked through some of the details on that.
So Dr. Frazier, what we're doing is for our elementary school students, we're having at least a grade level contact person who will meet with the students after hours to go over assignments and make connections to learning. And for secondary classes, we were asked our core teachers to open up a Zoom link so that kids can participate remotely. What's different this year than what we've done in the past is because our focus is primarily on making sure that rather than having online instruction in person, that we're really having in-person instruction. We're trying to make sure that no children fall behind. We're not trying to do a dual modality. We're really trying to make sure that we're focusing on in-person instruction.
Dr. Fritz?
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Hamer, and I just wanted to remind everybody, to pull your mic close to your voice because the Zoom attendees can't hear very well. So it's my understanding that the advisory committee did meet and reviewed 60 proposals, correct?
Yes, ma'am, a little bit more than 60, yes, ma'am.
Okay. It's also my understanding that the Reimagine Schools proposal did not get reviewed by that committee.
No, it did not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Coakley?
Good afternoon, Mr. Baroli. In reference to those requesting to be like to avoid quarantine, are we requiring or requesting COVID documentation, or how are we making that happen when they're like wanting to avoid quarantine?
So, Ms. Coakley, good question. We have the ability to receive data from our testing organizations so that the test sites that we've set up, we can get that data from them. If a parent has taken their child to another location, they can send the test results either to the person that did the contact tracing with them or to their school nurse.
Okay. Ms. Herbert?
Mr. Hamer, can you elaborate a little bit more on the timeline for the distribution of ESSER funds?
Well, I do believe by the end of the month, those specific programs will come to light of ones that we want to invest in. And some of them, as you recall, are already underway. We've already approved some work that we want to do with indoor air quality and health protocols. That work is underway, and those funds are being arranged to go for that. I believe that some portion of these funds will be executed or recommended to be executed as early as this summer. There's some recommended programs and activities that I think will begin as soon as that. But I would say that, you know, certainly the whole $163 million wouldn't be executed in the first year. Some of those monies are set aside for charter schools, and they have a schedule that they will be executed. But I think in the significant amount of the money will begin this summer with some of the programs that we're on.
Is there a specific deadline that's been set by the state?
Well, no, ma'am, just that all of the funds have to be obligated by September of 2024. I mean, all of the school districts have some flexibility to how they spend that. And of course, as I've said before, it won't be something that you'll have to kind of guess in terms of the pace of how it's spent, the money is spent. We're developing metrics so you can see the pace of where it's spent, how much is left, where the money is going to, what programs they're going to. So we'll be able to see in real time the pace that the money is being spent.
All right, Ms. Coates?
So I have two follow-up questions. Ms. Felcher, can you elaborate again on, you mentioned for K-8, they're meeting with those students each day after school, or so are students coming to class after school's over? How's that working?
A teacher is reaching out by each grade level to a group of students. So it's happening after school though. So we're compensating those teachers for the additional hour or two of service every day.
So a teacher is gathering together a Zoom class? Or phone call? Or
yes,
what?
like it could be a Zoom class or a phone call, depending on what's needed for the kids.
Okay. And Mr. Hamer, I keep getting confused. Do the funds have to be expended by September 30, 2024 or encumbered by September 30, 2024?
I think encumbered is the right term, or obligated. As
Right,
well
you
as
said obligated, so we don't have to have it, we don't have to have them spent, we just have to have the plan to spend it.
That's correct. You don't have to have them actually spent.
May I clarify that actually?
Okay, hold on.
I have two questions. Mr. Baroli, when you mentioned the testing out to, instead of being in quarantine for close contacts, is it the case that rapid tests only can test positive if the student is exhibiting symptoms?
That's not the case. It can test positive if they're not exhibiting symptoms yet. I don't have the data on the. I know I don't have the data on the exact percentages of that. I don't know if Ellen Nitz on the line can make any comments to that or not related to the rapid test. Is Ellen there?
I am here.
Any comments about the viability of the rapid test?
So as we all know, the rapid test, I mean, they give you the results within 15 minutes. Due to the volume, we are seeing a delay of normally 3 to 4 hours before parents or staff may get those results back. But PCRs are now taking anywhere from 72 hours or longer to receive results. So again, with the positivity rate the way that it is, DHEC will inform us that a positive is a positive and that we would go by, you know, by the rapid test.
Maybe we should clarify that I was concerned about the accuracy of the test.
Yes. And so again, the accuracy of the test with a rapid test, it's not going to be as good as a PCR. But again, DHEC would look at us and tell us that if it is a positive due to the community rate that we have at this time being high, that we would continue to treat it as a high.
Okay. I'm just a little bit concerned that we may have some kids sitting in class who are really positive for COVID, but are testing negative. So, you know, just wanted to kind of highlight that. And then the second question I have is for Mr. Hamer. When is the deadline, or I guess I should ask, are we operating against the timeline that's state imposed or federally imposed by which we need to have approved the ESSER proposals?
Well, we submitted our application in August, so we met that deadline for having submitted it. There've been some slight edits for some clarifications that I've been working with the coordinator at the state that I've been doing over the last few months. Again, the only key deadline is the date that I have it obligated. There's and there's also some deadlines that we have an opportunity to update the plan or to provide some more information. We're tracking on that. We haven't missed any marks on that. So the only key deadline though that we want to manage towards is making sure that we have those funds obligated by that plan.
If we
Well, of course, it's our intention to develop a program and manage it so we don't have to let over. We will have opportunities, as I said, to kind of take a step back and look at our execution rate versus the amount left and develop some plans based on that. So if we get to the point, I would recommend to the board if we got to the point where we're seeing that the programs didn't cost as much, or we decided to put them towards less expensive programs, and we're at a point maybe a year out, maybe 6 months out, and I would come forward with a plan for how to execute the rest of that money.
Okay, I think Dr. French had a follow-up question, and then Ms. Coakley.
So I wanted to come back to Ms. Cook's question because I actually asked the Council of Great City Schools, and their legal team said that we have to spend the money by September 30th, 2024. We have to spend it. So we can't have it, we can't commit it and then spend it after that. I just wanted to make that more clear. Is that your understanding?
Yes, ma'am. When I used the term obligate, I didn't mean spend.
Okay,
I mean,
well, that's helpful because a lot of the public doesn't understand those words.
Yeah. But you're right. When you obligate it, you have effectively put it towards the program that you wanted to, and it's seen as encumbered or set up for spending, and got that block check of making sure that that's going to the right program at the right time. But yeah, just point of clarification, when I said obligate, I am kind of using that synonymously with spend it.
And I'm not sure if we can answer this question right now, but I was under the impression that a lot of the spending that we would be doing with the ESSER money would be part of our regular budget and part of services that the district provides, not that we would spend the bulk of that money on community supported projects.
Well, I would say that I'm still developing kind of those categories that we want to spend that money. I think what you said is correct. I believe, at least at this point, it appears that most of the programs would align with programs that are already underway, or that the learning services and operations see as the priorities. and some portion of them will be executed with the resources that community-based organizations have. So I can't say for sure exactly. I will by the time I brief you again how these recommended funds are lining up. But I think most likely the bulk of it will come with programs that are existing within the staff developed plan.
If I could add, Mr. Hamer, I think that the aim would be something, for example, like we're offering a summer program for students like we did last year to add additional time, additional academic supports. And as part of that, we also had community partners who provided things like karate classes, who did like STEM programs. So I think there are ways in which we would be offering programming and have community partners embedded as well. But you're right, ma'am. The goal here is to make sure that we're doing what the ESSER funding is intended for, which is closing achievement gaps and making up remedies around COVID recovery, like the HVAC systems.
Oakley?
Yes, this was just a follow-up to what Dr. French had asked. The CCF proposal, is there any particular reason that it wasn't bought before the advisory committee?
But yes, so if the question is for me, I believe that program, at the time that it was being reviewed by the advisory team, it was proposed that it not be funded with ESSER funds. I didn't think that this first review by the advisory team was in of itself the last word on reviewing these proposals. So at the session where we looked at all of them, I looked at the ones that I knew that were going to be under the umbrella of the ESSER program for sure, and asked them to review those.
Ms. Herbert?
Have all schools been able to apply for ESSER funding?
All the schools. Well, there wasn't really a process for application by the schools. I think the schools certainly have had an opportunity to talk to us about programs that they think would be useful to them. At least in a couple of forums that have been, and they've given some feedback on that. So, they've had the opportunity, but to answer the question, it's not all the schools have provided a list of the things that they want to have with this program.
Are we going to provide that opportunity and guidance?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. That's part of the process that I was just talking to you about earlier. We're going to have an engagement with principals later this week to reaffirm things that we've briefed before on what we think are going to be the goals and the key pillars of this, and to listen to the comment and feedback on that.
I think, I'm sorry, Mr. Hammond. Sorry, Ms. Hutter. Just a reminder, but ESSER 2 is still in the process of being spent. So under ESSER 2, schools have an opportunity to submit a request to Ms. Simmons or Dr. Williams for additional funding, up to roughly around $100,000 at that point for what they saw as their biggest COVID gap. So that's being spent this current year right now. So just a reminder.
And did all schools apply for that?
Not all schools, but majority. But it was open to all.
But we'll open up another round within ESSER 3 for them to be supported. SICs.
Well, yes, as I said, I mean, there's, we made it clear that with the community and the school input on the programs is something that we welcome and incorporate into our program. And I believe we have a mechanism where it's clear from schools that they can do that. And so the question is yes, if the school says, hey, I think this would be good for us and our students and our community, and here's a particular program we'd like to entertain, there's an easy way for us to incorporate that throughout the period of time of this program. Again, even though we are well into having the funds been allocated to this, we're still on kind of the front end of the execution. So we've got opportunities not only this year but throughout the schools to develop programs and ask us to make that.
Okay. I just think it's really important for us to discuss sustainability and really be able to support schools in the long term beyond 2024.
Yes, ma'am.
Both with community organizations and supporting SICs.
Dr.
Yes, ma'am. For the sake of transparency, Mr. Hamer, how will we get a copy of the organizations that submitted proposals? Will that be available to the public? And will the amounts be available to the public? I'm also interested in accountability. How can we be assured that these organizations who are requesting money show us that they're doing what they're supposed to do and they're providing the services that they're supposed to provide?
Yes, ma'am. To your first question, I'll work with the senior staff here to figure out a mechanism for visibility on those organizations that have reached out to us so that the board is aware of those. But, we just went over this in some detail a few hours ago. If the school district is going to have a partnership for a particular service with an organization, then there's a contract, there's a service agreement. And within the service agreement, there's some specific standards and specific outcomes and specific performances that we will be able to determine if they've done it or not. So that's the way we will make sure that there's accountability. That if we've signed a contract or have some agreement and we've said that for this amount of funding, we will do A, B, and C, then we'll have some quality assurance mechanism in place to make sure that they've executed it in the way of the contract that we've signed with them. So that's how we will make sure we've got accountability.
So the public will have access to this list of vendors, or would that just be for board review?
Well,
The list
again, yes, ma'am. I'll work with the senior staff to figure out the right mechanism for both the board and the public. Again, nothing has been determined in terms of any decision on any of the proposals. And so there is a list of folks who in some manner have reached out to the school district that I think is what you're interested in. I believe we can send that to you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any?
I have a question. I just want to correct one of my statements earlier. I mentioned that there were less than 10 classes that have been quarantined. There are actually 30 classes that are quarantined at this point, subject to change with the latest guidance. So hopefully the number will go down.
Jeff, for vaccinated students, can you describe the fully vaccinated, they're exempt from quarantine?
So fully vaccinated students are exempt from quarantine as long as they're asymptomatic, if they're close contact.
I had two things. One, I wanted to just, as we begin the beginning of the year, say to all the staff and all the nurses and everybody in every school, principal and principals, I think for the whole board, thanks this for the amazing work that you're doing while battling COVID. And I think it's amazing, and it's been a shining light the school district has in being able to keep our kids in school. And really, the 9 of us have had diddly squat to do with that. You all have done that, so thank you all very much for that. And those that can support you. The other thing I wanted to just reiterate and just ask too on the sustainability piece today in public comment and the comments that we've gotten from people via email, they talk a lot about, well, if we just had more resources, we can make our school better. And I think we have this opportunity with the ESSER funds to put money into our schools and hopefully then make a difference in the student outcomes. But it's finite. And so we can't hire a bunch of teachers and then after 2024, how are we paying for that? Because as I think you probably all know, our budget is a challenging thing each year. So I just hope our board and staff will really look at how can we make whatever programs we put in place as sustainable as possible. So thank you. Anybody else have any other questions on this? On the superintendent. Okay. Thank y'all again for all of that and answering all of our questions. The next item is item 5, other board committees, audit and finance committee meeting review. Green, do you want to comment on that at all? Yes, the audit and finance. The audit and finance committee has not yet scheduled the Christmas holidays tomorrow. This is the action item and information items that we tomorrow. And we documents regarding those items at the board meeting. 24. Okay, does anybody have any questions for Ms. Green before that meeting? Okay. Okay, next item is item 6, other business, a legislative update. Dr. Taylor, let me know we will not have a report today just because legislature is not in session. They come back in starting tomorrow. And Daryl will be back with a report to us in February.
Any com- do you have the schedule of the education committee meetings that are happening Wednesday, so we can at least know if we want to log on and look at those? Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Okay. Closing items, then we have a hopefully quick special call board meeting immediately following our meeting. Then January 24th, we have a board meeting. And we will missing Ms. Frederick, so she will be a mom of 2 by then, hopefully. And then February 14th and February 28th are our February meeting. Any other items, Dr. French?
I have a question. When will we be meeting with Mr. Creville about our governance training? Since our contract is in place.
Anything else? All right, before I adjourn, Reverend Mack, what time are we starting the board meeting?
Take a break.
Say 5 minutes. All right, have a motion to adjourn.
January 10th. I will now call the January 10th, 2022 Board of Trustees special call meeting to order. Entertain a motion for the adoption of the agenda.
Reverend Mack, considering the feedback we've received, I'd like to make a motion to remove item 5A, Reimagine Schools, from the agenda until we can have further community discussion.
Moved by Ms. Hedrick, second by Ms. Waters to remove item 5A. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask that you please cast your vote. Make sure you switch to the special call meeting.
I vote aye.
Thank you.
And I vote aye to get in.
Okay, Ms. Copeland, I'm sorry, Ms. Yes, Ms. Copeland, Dr. Frazier votes aye. Okay, that motion passes. Entertain a motion to go to executive session.
Second.
Properly moved to go into executive session. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we ask those of you that are not a part of executive session, if you will please excuse yourself at this time, and you will be notified when we return back to open session.
Just in the last hour or two.
We will now reconvene back into open session. Entertain a motion for item 4A.
I move to approve the foreign exchange student attending the requested school.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Darby, second by Ms. Hedrick. I'll get it right after a while. Are there any questions? Hearing no questions, ask that you please cast your vote. Ms. Coakley, are you able to vote electronically? Is Ms. Coakley still on? Okay. All right. All right, that motion passes. Item 5A was removed from the agenda. Item 6A. Is there a
I move
motion?
to, I move, oh, go ahead. I move to reinstate policy ADD. But do have a question.
All right.
I'd like to reinstate
Before
policy.
you do your question, I just need to get a second on it, then you can ask your question.
Yes, I was gonna give a date.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So I vote to I move to reinstate policy ADD until the end of, until mid-March. And so whatever the official board meeting is in March, I guess would be the next date, just through what is said to be the peak of Omicron.
Can we get that? What's that date in March?
March 28th is the board meeting and the 14th is.
So,
Maybe a special call meeting on the 14th.
well, we have a meeting on, okay, all right.
Yeah,
All right, so is there a second?
Through March 14th.
yes.
Is there a second?
Sorry, it was not written down,
Yeah.
but we got there.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second by Dr. Frazier. Are there questions? Dr. French?
So I have a question because our policy is written such that it can be, the mask requirement can be lifted if the incidence rates goes down, right? Or the overall categorization in the county goes down. So would it be acceptable to just say, we have the policy in place so the academic year, the superintendent will change the requirement based, pursuant to policy, rather than having to come back and vote on it?
I'm totally fine with that if the policy supports that.
So the only thing that I would say about that would be that it could literally be low one week and come back medium the next week. And are you saying that they're going to send out a notice every Sunday night telling parents whether it exists or not.
Well,
I mean, that's what you're actually saying
Yeah.
and that's what the policy reads. Just I wanted y'all to make sure we clearly understand what that does to a parent at 8 o'clock every Sunday
May I
night.
respond to what you said? So
Mhm.
I actually asked at the time we put that in place, that we have a time period, a buffer for when we get into the low category.
That's not in the
And-
policy though.
I know, I asked that we consider that and it was rejected.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the policy we have. Now, we could move to say in our motion that we want a 1 week buffer or whatever for that.
Okay.
If
Let's-
if
let's
it's too
get-
complicated, we could just go with Ms. Waters' motion and continue to vote on it every 6 weeks.
Okay, let's get the motion repeated. Julie, can you just restate the motion, please?
Motion to reinstate policy ABD until the March special board meeting.
Okay. All right. Ms. Darby?
Just so everybody knows that the policy, what the policy says is this policy is intended to be in effect when the COVID-19 recent disease activity by county rating in Charleston County is medium or high by the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. And Dr. French and I actually talked about this today. It's in here, so based on what's in the policy, if it becomes medium or high, we should go into wearing a mask, and if it comes out of that, we shouldn't. Personally, I have liked us having the dates where we've taken action, because I think it gives the public, an opportunity to give us input, and also it puts that responsibility on us versus the staff. So I would, although I get what you want to do, what you're trying to do, so I would support your motion as it's stated.
My only thought here is perhaps if it would make it easier for staff and for parents if we add it into the motion, or at the discretion of the superintendent, if, based, keeping in accordance with policy, like for instance, if we did get into low, that the superintendent would have the opportunity to review it, whether he took a week or two, et cetera, only because I do realize that March 14th is a long time and that's when it is said to be peaking. But, if by chance it peaks before and goes down, we may want to give an opportunity for the district to back out of that, and not be
Bound to that date.
right. So I'm sorry to further complicate things, but I do think given what folks have shared, it might be nice to have some little workaround.
So maybe a possible friendly amendment to allow the superintendent to have discretion to make a recommendation to us if we get into the low category.
Prior to that date.
Yeah, so just 1 second.
Okay, can I ask a question before you do that?
Mhm.
So Mr. Massey, if, let's say, Omicron peaks in the end of January and our numbers are significantly down by February, whatever our February meeting is, February 14th, could we not go ahead and, following our normal process to put an item on the agenda, could we not just put an item on the agenda to lift the mask mandate? We don't have to wait until that March date. We can do- Yeah.
Sometimes, I'm
All right.
okay with that one.
Okay.
All right, so we are with the motion. We're fine. All right, Julie, can you
Yes.
can you just restate the motion for clarity? All right. All right, hearing no further discussion then, we ask that you please cast your vote. I think Ms. Coakley's online. Does Ms. Coakley vote in electronic?
Reverend Mack,
Yes.
sort of a follow-up question about procedure. This is the second time in recent meetings that we have said, we're going to have a special called meeting at a certain date and later on. I'm not sure how regular that is and whether we need to be more careful about that. Is there something that, could we vote on that in the CAL, for instance, or does
So-
it have to be in a board meeting?
Say that part again, I'm sorry.
So we have
Question.
recently voted to postpone or to set a date to consider something in such a way that it requires a special call board meeting. And I'm wondering if we need to be more careful about that.
I mean, again, it's at the
Maybe it's
discretion
for
of the
Mr.
board.
Mazik.
Yeah.
But I think Kristen's I think your question, you didn't say it the second time is can we take an action in the committee of the whole and just not call the meeting? No. And I was gonna say, I wanted her to make sure she got an answer to that question.
Right, so,
Yeah, thank you.
so that will constitute a special call meeting at the end of the COW meeting in order to take action on that.
Can't take action in a committee of the whole meeting. It's binding on the district.
That's fine. I
All
just
right.
thought it was kind of strange that we keep doing this.
It is.
All right, let me just, I failed to, in the beginning, just take a moment here of silence. Board members and members of the audience, I sadly must announce the passing of 3 students over the past few weeks. West Ashley High School senior, Damian Champagne, who's a North Charleston High School student, Terrell Backman Carter, and 9-year-old Harborview Elementary student, Sullivan Davis Jones, transition as well. And also we'd like to keep our interim superintendent, Mr. Don Kennedy, in our prayers in the passing of his mother over the weekend. We extend our deepest condolences to their families, friends, and school communities and loved ones as they mourn the loss of these young ones and share in their sorrow. We pray for strength and comfort for them in the weeks and months to come. Let us bow our heads. In your hands, O Lord, we humbly entrust our brothers and sisters in this life. You embrace them with your tender love. Deliver them now from every evil and bid them eternal rest. The old order has passed away. Welcome them into paradise, where there will be no sorrow, no weeping or pain, but fullness of peace and joy with your Son and the Holy Spirit forever and ever. Amen. Entertain a motion now for an adjournment.
So moved.
This meeting is now officially